Good Friday morning. It's July 31st, 2020. Last day of the work week for most people. Last day of the work month for most people. Maybe the last July most of us will see. Maybe. We'll see. And this is Guy McPherson of GuyMcPherson.com, otherwise known as Nature Bats Last. And here with a few headlines as the markets open in the United States. First of all, from yesterday in the Washington Post, public health experts issue urgent call for change of course. What do you think? Think we're going to have a change of course? I don't. I think it's business as usual right up until the bitter end, and that end is very near. From 2 days ago, speaking of financial markets, this on RT, bye-bye Benjamin. Russia and China speed up de-dollarization process. Most trade no longer conducted in greenbacks. There you go. As I indicated, was already happening in yesterday morning's essay. We're in the midst of a great economic contraction, the most severe one in modern history. And so sure enough, after the markets closed yesterday, this is the headline from Fox Business. Even Fox is admitting stocks tumble as U.S. economy shrinks most in history. Shrinks most in history. From this morning, BBC News, Eurozone suffers deepest contraction on record. So it's not just the United States, it's the European Union in the midst of an amazing economic contraction too. And that suggests to me that we will lose sufficient aerosol masking to cause the temperature to go up quite rapidly. We're already at 2C above the 1750 baseline, and with, as I indicated in yesterday's video, with each 1 degree increase in global average temperature, we see a 7% increase in humidity, in moisture in the atmosphere. What does that mean? It means that we are already seeing people die as a result of lethal wet bulb temperatures. This is a graph. You can find a similar graph using your favorite search engine online. It indicates on the horizontal axis temperature, on the vertical axis humidity, relative humidity in this case, and it indicates that with increasing temperature and relative humidity, we as human beings are more susceptible to overheating and as a result to death from lethal wet bulb temperatures as our organs fail. How does that work? Well, it's all about, you know the expression, it's all relative. In this case, it is all relative. And the relativeness in question here is the moisture in the atmosphere surrounding your body and the pores in your body. If you're in a dry environment, if you're in the hot desert, for example, the Sonoran Desert, the temperature goes up, but the air remains dry, and as a consequence, the humidity outside your skin is dry. So there's this amazing gradient from inside your skin to outside your skin, so your pores start emitting moisture rapidly into the atmosphere, and that causes you to cool off. As humidity rises at the same temperature, however, there's not that much of a gradient. The relativeness is reduced, and so there's not much of a gradient between inside your skin and outside your skin. So those pores, which are willing to let go of a lot of moisture and therefore cool you off when it's dry outside, are not able to do that when it's wet outside. And so you can't cool off by sweating. You just maintain a very high level of heat inside your body that leads to lethal wet bulb temperatures. That's what we're seeing, especially in tropical and subtropical regions around the planet. And this is reported in the peer-reviewed literature. Follow my work at GuyMcPherson.com for more. Back to the economy and its immediate effects. This from Politico, millions to lose $600 weekly jobless aid amid Senate stalemate. So as you might expect, or certainly as I expect, we are seeing the conventional congressional response to poverty in the United States, which is to ignore it. which is to continue funneling the money from the poor to the rich. This is interesting. California Governor Newsom appeals to Warren Buffett to support removal of dams. It won't be long now before there are no humans here, and so all those dams are going to go. Gavin Newsom, this should be the least of your worries. Why don't you approach Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and anybody else you're in contact with, Jeff Bezos, who has this kind of money, and get them to support Ye Tao's research at Harvard University at the Rowland Center that actually presents the only viable scenario I've seen to reduce the heating of the planet and therefore maybe save habitat for human beings. I'm not optimistic about this working, but I think it's the only shot we have. So let's stop worrying about long-term problems such as dams and start worrying about short-term problems like habitat for human animals here on Earth. I think that's a far better use of our time and energy, is to get Jeff Bezos and Warren Buffett and Bill Gates to agree that we need to save habitat for human animals on this planet, and therefore to fund the project that Ye Tao is working on. Sorry about the soapbox. Back to this morning's headlines. This from Bloomberg. How U.S. poverty could spike in the last half of the year, you think? You think there might be some continuation of business as usual, taking taxpayers' money from the taxpayers that put it into the economy, taking it and giving it to the rich? You know, I think that might continue to happen. Color me pessimistic. And finally, again, as a reflection of the response of the United States government to the greatest existential threat our species has ever faced, this headline from CNBC: U.S. agrees to pay Sanofi and GSK $2.1 billion for 100 million doses of coronavirus vaccine. That's fine. I agree that it'd be great to have a vaccine. I don't see one coming. I don't think it's particularly likely that it will happen, but I think it's great to invest in such a vaccine. I think it's even more important to invest in human habitat. I call again for the U.S. government that prints the money and people and organizations who have access to a lot of money and a lot of political power to fund the only project I think has any chance of preserving habitat for our favorite species here on Earth. And that's the project being headed by Ye Tao at the Rowland Institute of Harvard University. So let's do that. Let's do that instead of continuing business as usual, instead of continuing to assure that we are screwed without a kiss. Okay, now that the markets have opened in the United States, we see that contrary to all that horrible news I just presented, all the major indexes are, you guessed it, up. Admittedly, mildly, it's 7:35 in the morning Eastern Time. So the NASDAQ, the tech stocks, are up 110. Dow Jones is up about 40, and the S&P 500 is up about 10. So there you go. The disconnect continues between what's happening in the world, what we want to happen in the world, and the actions that are being taken at the level of people with a lot of money and governments. It's a sad story. A line from Chris Christopherson comes to mind, a story that's sad, but it's true.